Tim. Dance.
Hey.
Aren't you looking so handsome? Happy New Year. First of
Thank you.
all.
Happy New Year to you. I am literally just walking in the door.
You are, but you look absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank you.
And you have a haircut.
No, it's just pulled. I just brushed it back.
Well, I'm really loving this whole look. So, hello, everybody. Thank you for being here today. Welcome to If These Walls Could Talk. I am Wendy Stuart.
And I'm Tym Moss, and I'm going to step over here and get my water. I'll be right back.
Go get your water, honey. We would hate for Tim to be parched and expire on this live stream, right? Because we need to have him. How is everybody? Yes, we made it through New Year's. I had to tell you something. I want to share this with you too, Tim. My daughter, you know, my glass is always half full, and I'm like all about the lightness in the room. She's totally opposite. And she said, she can't stand the pressure of people saying, oh, it's a new year. She says, what the heck is so different or great about it being a new year? And I didn't know what to say to her when she...
Well, it is. It's a man-made construct, kind of like time itself and all that. So
that's exactly what she said. Like she said it's a construct.
Absolutely.
Oh my God. So you're all on the same page. I know. You know, Alan, my husband, is like, oh, it's great. It's a new year. But now I'm thinking it's like, you know, I don't know who the heck knows, you know.
Well, people are trying to always set resolutions and do all of that. And I try to do that all year long. I'm always trying to improve myself. And if there's a fault or something I can change, I try to change it. And I don't wait till New Year's. So I don't know. New Year's for me is kind of like for everybody else. The party. So
well, I'm so glad you're working on yourself all year long. I have actually been compiling a list of things that I think you need to change, which I'll be sending to you.
Okay.
That's nothing. Because you, Tym Moss, you are perfect. Okay.
Oh, thank you. And so are you.
Well, thank you. And a big, generous heart. And you always lift everybody up. And to me, I agree with Tim, no matter where we are in the year, that's really what it should be all about. You know, there's enough stuff out there that
one thing too, like at Christmas, which we just came through the Christmas season, everybody is just a little nicer. They're a little kinder, all of this. I try to take that spirit along with me all year long too.
Thank you.
Why do we have to wait till different parts, you know? So
we should all have that Christmas spirit. I agree with you. A holiday spirit all year long. Well, speaking of spirit, okay, here's my announcement. I, of course, am celebrating myself January 15th.
Yay! We're all celebrating you, Wendy.
Thank you so much. We're going to be here at PANGEA. There's going to be two Joes. There'll be more than two Joes. God, we know so many people named Joe. There will be 2 shows. The whole place will be alive. We'll have music, incredible entertainment, wonderful hors d'oeuvres. And if you're watching and you know me, you are invited. Okay. Chances are, if you're watching and you know me, you've already been invited.
Yes, right.
So there you go. Yes, Tim.
Just a couple things. One is Chauncey just sent a message that says the new year means the earth completed a resolution around the sun. So it's a reason to reset and make changes. And that is very true.
I'll go with that. I feel like
Chauncey Dandridge, our producer, and
who happens to be very sensible, by the way, maybe a little bit. No, he's our producer. He's also a wonderful performer. He's a poet, and he's got a lot of hot songs out there now.
Yeah.
He's just a great person.
Does it all.
What Chauncey said. You're right. The reset button is a very important thing.
Well, again, it's kind of a time that man has made to reset and you know, all through time, you know, like a lot of times it was the harvest and before the winter, and then the winter and
we're in the caves,
equinoxes and all of that. And
we're in the caves watching
there were times of year for certain mindsets. And that's what New Year has been set for.
Absolutely.
But I had an interesting New Year. It was literally, I was at home and literally it went 3, 2, 1, Happy New Year, Auld Lang Syne. Then they started to play Start Spreading and that's all I heard. I had to run to the bathroom. I got food poisoning. Literally right after midnight at 12:03, I was done. And oh, it was horrible.
Well, okay, I got to tell you, there's a lot of symbolism in that, Tim, because you
Okay.
do that song. That's one of the songs you do on stage.
Yeah, true.
All right. And the timing of that, right? We're resetting. We've revolved around the sun. The new year is coming and the ball has dropped. And Tim dropped his food.
Well, I got rid of everything.
And you know what?
Released everything. The way I look at it is I got all the bad crud out right at the beginning of the year. So now
this is what I call a psychic purge, Tym Moss. It's perfect. So you know what? You are literally starting with a clean slate this year.
Yeah, and lost a couple pounds too. It's a great diet.
Right. And don't we always make New Year's resolutions? Oh, I'm going to lose that 5 extra pounds. Well, Tim did it at the stroke of midnight.
Food poisoning took care of that weight loss.
There you go. So very excited about.
Well, firstly, I just want to say that thank you for tuning in to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss. And we will be right back with our amazing and wonderful guest.
Okay, so our amazing and wonderful guest. I love starting off the year with her because she's a New Yorker. Okay, she's a poet. She's a performer. She's a musician. She also writes regular prose, or I don't know. I don't know all the writing.
And she's an award winner.
Award winner, right?
Yeah.
Award-winning journalist, and originally hailing from Brooklyn, which is a place close to our hearts. I am a borough girl. I'm from the Bronx originally. Tim performs all the time and raises a lot of money for LGBTQ community in the Bronx. My husband's from Brooklyn. Let's hear it for the boroughs here today. Her poems have been described as chiseled in granite with fingernails. I love that.
Yes.
A major force in the international underground poetry scene. Work that brings to life the streets of the Lower East Side. Her band, Puma Perl and Friends, is described as art at its best, collaborative, thrilling, authentic. I love that word. It's poetry, music, and its own divine experience.
Yes.
Let's give a round of applause for the divine Puma Perls.
Yay!
Thank you. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Puma. How are you? Nice to see you.
It's so funny because sometimes people don't realize we're all seeing each other like virtually for the first time, like on this show. It's like, oh my God, we're so like tech.
But you and I are in person, though.
No, we are in person. It gets confusing.
Yes, I was almost there in person. Yes,
right. Tim tried, but you know what? The beauty of streaming, right? Because it lets us go all over the world. We travel all over the world now without ever leaving the corner of the couch, as I like to tell people. Puma, thank you so much for
thank you for having me.
For being. Please adjust your scarf. You can see yourself in there. I love people that are self-conscious. I mean, you're a performer, you wouldn't be, but when people are self-conscious and they see themselves in that little Hollywood square box for the first time, it can be a little unnerving.
No, actually, I was just choking.
I love it. Puma came on here to choke. And welcome to New Year. Sick sense of humor as the rest of us. I just really want to, first shot out of the bag, talk about your current thing. You have a monthly show at the Anyway Cafe. They call that Artist in Residency.
We do. We have a residency at Anyway Cafe, which is a really lovely place with authentic Russian food, kick-ass martinis. It's myself, my guitar, our guitarist, Joe Stabnik, because we all belong to this world, and Dave Donan, our drummer, because we all play together in Puma Perl and Friends, as well as everyone has their other projects.
Puma Perl and Friends has been around, what, 12 years?
About 10 years.
About 10 years. So,
let me just say,
I want to talk more about
our next Anyway Cafe show will be a week from, what day is it? It's this coming Monday, January 9th. It's 8 to 10, and there is no cover or admission. And
now, where is that? Where's that located?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's at 34 East 2nd Street between Bowery and 2nd.
Okay. I totally love that area. And you had me at the Russian food. How are the
Very
drinks?
good martinis.
Good martinis.
Every flavor you can imagine if you're into that, or you could get something else if you're more mundane. Of course, we're not.
No, I love that she included us in the non-mundane.
No, I could tell.
Right. I mean, I guess it all really hangs out, the non-mundane people in the world. So this is such an open loaded question. How the hell did you become so interesting? I've never asked anybody that. It's just you said that thing. I know. It's funny. It just came from- How the hell did you become so interesting? What's your story, Morning Glory?
Well, probably if you grow up as like a complete introvert and terrified of everybody and everything, you learn
Amazing.
to amuse yourself.
Yeah.
that could be part of it. I was an inveterate reader. I always loved to read.
You loved to read. You loved
I
words.
loved to read, loved words. It wasn't cool where I was growing up, and we had mentioned that growing up in the Gravesend section of Brooklyn.
But you weren't born in Gravesend.
I was born in Crown Heights.
Right.
We moved to Gravesend when I was 6, so I
Right.
didn't.
And you know now Crown Heights is some of the most expensive real estate. The
Everything in
rentals there
Brooklyn,
are
yeah.
the Crown. It's amazing to me
Yeah.
because I remember Crown Heights. There were riots at one point in Crown. I don't know
There've
if you
been
were
many riots.
Right.
There were riots in Bensonhurst.
right.
Yes.
Right. Where I was
Yes.
from.
Yes.
Now, where is Gravesend?
Gravesend is it's on the way to Coney Island. Okay.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. It was out
that's
Bay
the
Ridge.
best I
Bay
can
Ridge.
It's not quite Bensonhurst,
Okay.
but
Okay.
it's next to Benson. It's even more boring than Bensonhurst.
Right.
Yeah.
It's kind of industrial too, isn't it?
I'm
You're
not really industrial.
you're along the water. Are you along?
No, it's not
Okay.
near the water. No, it's if you ride the F train, it's
Yeah.
under the L on McDonald Avenue.
Okay.
So
Okay.
if you ride to
Coney.
so when you get to Coney, then you're
Right.
in Coney Island. Then
Right.
this part where you're in Gravesend, and then it goes up to the other. I could never figure out what
Well, you were-
directions mean in Brooklyn,
Yeah.
like east, north, and it just doesn't make sense.
So I'm going to share this with both of you. My husband, Alan, who does the lighting for the show, has like not only no sense of direction, it's actually scary. When I'm alone with him in the car and I don't know where I'm going, I'm afraid. I would pick up a hitchhiker because it's that bad. So you just gave reason, Puma, as to why maybe he's not so good with directions.
Because
Is it
he's from Brooklyn.
It's
Thank you.
it's just that the compass doesn't make sense.
The
in Brooklyn.
compass
Uh-huh.
just
Like I've driven all around the country and figured it out. You can tell when you're going east. You can tell when you're going north.
Right.
You can't tell in Brooklyn because South
Right.
Brooklyn is
agree.
actually North Brooklyn. It's just South Brooklyn because it's south of Manhattan.
so
Uh-huh.
it's not us, it's Brooklyn.
Yeah, it's not
Okay,
us.
cool. Well, I'm just so I can
Totally
get on with
not
my
us.
can get on with my life.
Yeah.
So your family moved there, I guess, they thought it was a better place to raise kids or
What, from Crown Heights?
Yeah.
Well, like many European Jews, Eastern European Jews,
Right.
it was from Russia and Austria to the Lower East Side.
right.
And then my father's side went to the Bronx, and my mother's side went to Brownsville, which was okay at the time, those neighborhoods. And when my parents met, this was an interracial marriage, Bronx and Brooklyn.
I love that.
Yeah.
So
So they
that's
started
racial
out in
marriage
Crown
for-
Heights, and here we were across the street from the Botanical Gardens,
It's
Prospect Park,
You had it
Brooklyn
all.
Museum. So if you really want to put your cards on the table with that, why did they move? White flight. That's why they
Right.
moved. Developers redlining it.
My
Black
neighborhood, the
people.
white
Yeah, that's
flight
why they
was
moved. Yeah.
to Co-op City.
Yes, you
Mhm.
guys went. Our white flight, it had a few different steps to it. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like moving. My parents moved to Gravesend and stayed, but a lot of my aunts and uncles, their move went to Flatbush, then it went to Long Island. or New
Yeah, Long
Jersey,
Island. You were Tim.
that
You were
kind of
doing
thing.
like Long Island. You were doing really well.
Hmm.
Better than Brooklyn.
So you mentioned that you grew up very kind of isolated or introverted, and
You're
so you did a lot of reading.
Mm-hmm.
When did you discover you had the ability for communication or for writing? When did you find your voice?
Sometimes you're just not in the right place.
Uh-huh.
schools can be very unfair.
You didn't, from the time you went to Gravesend, from what I knew about you, that was not your fit.
It was not my thing, and you could try to fit in and try it. I'll teach you hair, wear black ripped stockings, everything you got to do.
Shredded.
But I used to like hide books like down my pants to go back and forth to the library, So
you loved reading.
I loved reading. And I remember one time some kids from school saw me going to the library twice and they were like, "What, you live in the library?"
So you were like nerdy, you think?
Yeah, if we had that word.
Yeah, we didn't have that word. We didn't have that word then.
But the thing
What word?
I was a
nerd.
I was a rebellious nerd. I was a nerd that got suspended from school.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I was a nerd that cut classes. So
I love it. So she could see you.
No, I was going to say, why would you cut class to read or?
No, to walk to Coney Island.
Oh, love it.
That is a true Brooklyn girl. Yes.
I didn't like going to class. I was a nerd that stood outside and smoked cigarettes.
Right.
So
you were a rebel. I like that.
I don't know if I was called a nerd because I didn't do well enough in school to be
right.
a nerd.
You couldn't have been right.
Yeah, so I couldn't have been that. I was just.
But I find it interesting that you had to hide the books to get to the library. Was that from your family or from
other kids?
No, other kids. It just was such an uncool thing to do.
Wow.
Of course, I could have had a different attitude of like, yeah, fuck you. Those are my books, And I mean, I was a fearful type of person on a certain level, and then on another level, I would get thrown out of classes by teachers because I would open up my mouth. So that people like me for that. So I don't know. I guess I was kind of complicated.
Well, yeah, and obviously, in many ways, you grew into your mouth. But nice Jewish girl didn't behave like that.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't this, and I wasn't.
I was going to say you probably had a lot of that at home. Those expectations, and there you were, honey, smoking cigarettes and giving back lip.
Well, they kept lowering their expectations.
Kept lowering the bar.
I just don't go to jail, okay?
Yeah.
So, were you at that stage of your life? Were you writing poetry?
Oh, no, I don't think I was writing poetry, but I was very, very, very good at writing.
You were a good writer.
We always were given assignments from elementary school up. They called them compositions. We remember writing compositions. My compositions were very good, and the term papers like in junior high and high school. I mean, I did term papers on things like existentialism.
Nobody could hold a candle to that. That's great.
But I couldn't pass science. I was one of those types. What I was good, what I liked, I was good at, and this followed me throughout my whole life. Because many, many years later, I did some vocational testing, and I scored off the charts in performing and literature and reading, and I scored at the bottom. You couldn't go any lower in like the sciences.
But okay, this is a really good point to bring up here.
Yes,
we came out of a time, where we could kind of carve our own path. All right. If Puma were in school nowadays, she would have been evaluated, put under a microscope, probably put on some kind of medication.
Because all the children, every kid is the same, and
and
has to reach a certain.
I'm sorry, but it drives me up a tree. Simply because the people that have been allowed to flourish and find their own way, my God, they're such incredible artists. Look what you write. Look what you do.
Yeah.
There's a class aspect to all of this also.
Thank you. Please share.
Yeah, because when you go to certain schools that are well funded, or even the parents are kicking in, or just have interesting parents involved, like you take the Nest on Houston Street. They do have writing, they do have poetry, they do have art, and you have permission to be an artist, right?
Yeah.
So I think I actually would have done better now.
Yeah, in a school like that, I know the Nest. It's a good school.
Because back when we were, I'm saying we, I don't know if we're the exact same age, but I think we grew up in the
same time. We came in at the same time.
Everything was regimented. There was no individualism. And where I came from in that neighborhood, there was no being an artist. That was like, what the fuck are you talking
Yeah, exactly. You were
about?"
made
know?
actually made fun of, and for me, that just always followed me through. My mother wanted me to get a job with a phone company.
Oh,
I
yeah.
bring this up all the time when I graduated high school because I was actually a good student, but my sister was brilliant and a photographic memory. So I had already been pigeonholed. Maybe not college material, which had the furthest thing from the truth,
such
but
a horrible expression.
she wanted me, right. She wanted me to have always, I remember hearing this, work for the phone company. You'll have something to fall back on. Right. We come from the same.
Totally. Except for me, it was get a civil service job.
It was the same thing. I think I remember hearing that. You take the test for the civil service.
Yes, get that paper that used to come out on Tuesdays, the chief.
Right.
Get the chief. Said that there were individuals who came out of the same repressive environment that did have the courage to break out of it, and it's not like there were no artists or no musicians.
Right.
There were a few. I just didn't have at that time the confidence to connect to those.
Right. Well, when did you go to college?
I was on the plan where you take 20-year breaks between every year.
Gap years. They call them gap years.
Yes.
20 years.
I did go to college for a while. I went to Brooklyn College, which that was the best thing I ever did in my mother's life. Was I got into Brooklyn College.
Yeah, that's a good school. Ella's mother went there, and you dropped out, but it wasn't for you.
But during that time, I just wasn't interested in that. But during that time, and at that time, and the city university colleges have changed, but at that time, it wasn't that different. The regimentation from high school.
Oh, I see.
Years, you had to toe the line and take, whatever classes they were recommending.
Right. Those core. I went to Lehman College.
The core classes.
I went to Lehman, a city college. Also.
But I didn't move out at the age of 17. I got part-time jobs. Back then, rent was not very high. It was easy to move out if you wanted to kill you first. You might have to.
Right.
Wait, did your mother attempt to kill you before you moved out?
She threw me down the stairs a few times. I mean, we lived on the top floor of a second family of a two-family.
Wait, we lived on the top floor and she threw her down the stairs.
I mean, I don't know if that was attempted murder or not.
Probably at her wit's end.
She would have gotten off for, purposes of it. No judge would have found her guilty with the door like that. We know that.
God, you were that bad, huh?
I wasn't that bad. What you could compare me to, I wasn't that bad.
Right.
You know what I mean? Did I molest anyone?
You were like Madonna. Arson. You were like Madonna for your time.
Without her ambition.
You knew, I'm defending you because you knew something else was out there for you.
I didn't know that.
But you just did it.
Yeah, but I didn't know that. I really didn't know that.
That's what I'm wondering is when did you get or give yourself permission?
Yeah.
To
be
right. To express yourself.
That's a great question. Because like I said, when I said I was on the 20-year break plan, I am not exaggerating. I went to the Borough of Manhattan Community College.
BMCC.
By that time, I had 2 kids. And by that time,
and then it interested me. School.
Yeah. I became interested in what I was doing. But then life got in the way. I took another 20-year break. And I finished.
You got 2 kids to raise.
Oh, yeah, excuse me. In defense of you, this whole having it all. I have one and a juggling act like nobody's business. And I'm sorry, but we really need to pat ourselves on the back. You raised 2. Good for you.
Well, there were many reasons, but
good for you.
I went to Empire State.
Yeah,
after that, which was great.
Yeah,
that was another 20 years, and you could design your own program, and you got credits for your life experience and what you did. So
which you had a lot of.
Yeah, so I was able to get a BA like that, and then I was working. At the time, I had started working in the 80s when the HIV crisis came about.
Yeah,
I had started working in harm reduction, and I worked for the first housing program, one of the first housing programs for people living with AIDS. It was called scattered site housing when that started. So I became a director of a program, and I was writing these letters of recommendation for my staff who wanted to go get their MSWs, Masters
Social
in
work,
Social
yeah.
So I said, well, why don't I do that? So I did that. I got my master's in social work from Hunter College of Social Work, and
That is, by the way, we have to say, one of the best. It really is one of the best for social work.
And you don't go into debt for the rest of your life,
Right.
like if you went to NYU or Columbia.
That's a whole
No,
ridiculous.
It was another
yeah.
great experience. I won a writing award there. I was like at the top of the graduating class, and I was someone who was like flunking out of everything the first time round. Like at Brooklyn, I couldn't pass anything because I had no interest. Later, I developed an interest. But what's funny is I did all of that, and after that, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
You were done.
I was so done.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I was bringing the arts into my work, and I had partially chosen Hunter because they had classes in social work and the arts, and I felt like, okay, here is something I could do. But unfortunately, my timing was not very good because it wasn't something that was popular with funders at that moment.
Oh,
they were going in another direction because there's always trends.
Right.
Whatever you look at, whether it's music, whether it's
absolutely,
so that wasn't the trend. I've never really been on top of
trend.
And
but you are uniquely you, and I love hearing your story. And then I want to ask how different your kids are or aren't compared to you, because you know what, you took this path, you took your own damn path, which is really what this is all about. And kudos for you being able to do that and having 2 kids along the way. I'm sorry, I didn't have my first kid till I was 40. You had already. You're right. I think
that's much smaller.
You know what? I don't know how you did it, and here you are. And
a friend of mine used to call it benign
published.
neglect.
Are your kids anything like you?
They like themselves,
Good answer.
Yeah. I mean, there may be some traits or something like. What's interesting with both my kids, and this is something that is similar to me, is that I did carve out this career as a social worker, but I was also an artist at the same time.
Right.
And it was during that time that I started writing more seriously and publishing, bringing the arts into my work, and finally, I just had to leave. Like there just was not room in my life for having this full-time job that I no longer believed in, not because of the clients, but because
no longer believed in,
because of the funding restrictions,
right?
Because it just wasn't something that was making sense anymore. Right. You know what I mean? I mean, I could go into this. I don't really have.
I have a number of friends that were social workers. Or station identification.
Yeah, I forgot the first couple of them because I was so enthralled in you.
I know. I'm so listening to you.
Thank you for tuning in to If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and our wonderful and fascinating guest, Puma Perl.
So at the time when you realized that social work, people don't know this, all right? They pulled the funding and they tied hands as a social work. So much of the horrible stuff that you read in the paper, and people point their fingers, where was the social worker? Why wasn't this? We pulled up the reports. The individual social workers' hands were tied. And unfortunately, that still goes on. And it's a bureaucratic bullshit.
Well, there's also nothing worse than to be an unengaged social worker.
Right.
You don't want that person as your. So I was also a therapist. By that time, I was also working in a program in a hospital. I never wanted to be a therapist ever, not for one moment. But that was part of the trend,
right.
So and really, we were handicapping people, keeping them dependent, keeping them reliant
on the system.
HIV had become not necessarily a terminal disease. It had become a chronic illness,
right?
But
manageable,
right? And many times there were times it may not be, but people who had been living with HIV for a long time had been pushed into this cycle of dependency,
right?
So many of them. So I just couldn't believe in what I was doing anymore. And again, it was never the clients. It was the bureaucracy. It was the funders. And so
that's always the case.
Yeah. So at the same time, I had become done more reading, done more writing, gotten published, started some poetry performance reading, shows. I had one in the Yippie Museum Cafe. I had one at Bowery Poetry Club with another friend of mine, and then sort of very organically, I started.
You kind of
working
like
with musicians
oozed into that part of your life.
Yeah.
What was your process? Tell us about the first book you did have published and the process involved with that.
The first one was called Belinda and Our Friends, and it took place right around the corner here on 10th Street between 1st and 2nd, where I had lived for a number of years. And this is kind of funny because I didn't know I was writing a book. Okay.
God, I love you. It's great. It just came upon me.
You're right. It became, I wrote about Belinda, who was actually a person. Then I wrote about Belinda sitting at her window. And then I wrote about someone else on that block. And then I wrote about the kids in the park. And I realized that all of this was connected and that this was actually a book.
Interesting.
Really, Tim, right? Wow. It's very interesting.
And that book won an international award as the best.
Yes.
By Baroque She.
Which I had one of the things I wanted to ask you, just to veer off a little. I was going to Google it. I'm like, no, I want Puma to tell me. Chapbook comes up.
That was my question too.
Yeah, I know.
You wrote 2 chapbooks, and what is a chapbook?
It's very simple. I wish I'd brought one, but you've seen them a million times. They do not have a proper bound spine such as this. They have staples in the center.
Oh, okay. And folded.
Yeah, and they're generally 40 pages or less.
Okay.
40 pages is about the most that you can do.
Now, were they fictional?
Yeah. What
are they? They could be anything.
Where did this concept of chapbook come from? Like, I now have seen that. I always called them pamphlets.
Yeah. People don't like them.
No, a pamphlet sounds like something you get at a tourist stop when you're trying to find where an amusement park is.
I don't have a definitive answer of who started publishing chapbooks, but I can say that I know poets who have put together a little chapbook for each of their readings.
Oh, that's great.
These are easy to do.
Right.
Getting published is very difficult. But getting chapbooks published is not as difficult because there isn't that kind of expense. So who did the first one? I don't know. I mean, mine was a chapbook. I never thought I'd have any book published. So
wow.
You wrote Ruby True and Belinda and Her Friends.
They're both chapbooks.
They're chapbooks.
So
right.
those are both fictional accounts.
They're based on
these people,
on my life and on the lives of other friends. So yeah, I mean, poetry can be a narrative,
right,
or totally imaginary,
right.
Filled with images. But I'm more down to earth with my writing, but at all times. So I would say, as compared to my other books, both of these chapbooks, they tell a story in poetic form, right. They include people who are real, including myself. But in Belinda and Her Friends, I'm not really in that book. I'm looking around.
So it's observational.
Yes, that's observational.
Observational. Tim, she's going to read 2 poems for us today. Okay. Yes, please. Yeah. And this is thank you, Lori, for lending me your copy of the book.
Let's do the commercial first.
Station identification.
So thank you for tuning into If These Walls Could Talk with your hosts, Wendy Stuart and Tym Moss, and the wonderful and fabulous Puma Perl.
Thank you. Well, Wendy, when I found out Lori had lent you that book, you didn't own it, I brought you an early birthday present.
Oh my God, that's so great.
So that's and it's funny because it's called Birthdays Before and After. I had no idea your birthday is coming up.
But it was karmic that this was supposed to happen. I had no idea that I was opening up the new year with you till it happened.
Right.
And it was so this is what I believe in, Tim, too. It was supposed to happen.
Yep.
And this book was supposed to be in my hands as part of my birthday. And it has so much meaning for me because of that. So thank you. Bless you.
And I will sign it afterwards.
Yes.
Okay. So the one you had asked me to read, The Beauty of Nothing.
Yes.
Yeah.
In dreams and New York City, you can pretend there are no hurricanes. Buildings erupt, tower over us. No sun fights through. Shadows hit concrete. but still we pretend there are no tornadoes. In dreams in New York City, silence engulfs the platform after the subway pulls out. No silence greater than a missed connection, an empty station. Yet I keep pretending that my life is full and noisy. I just can't hear it. In dreams in New York City, vacancy is an art unto itself. The beauty of nothing prevails.
I just love that. I know we have a second piece. I want to just talk for 2 minutes
Sure.
about that piece. First of all, the thing that really hit me on that piece as a subway person on there all the time, it is the nothingness of the missed train and when it pulls away. I think what turns me on so much about your writing, you have your perceptions, of course, they're unique to you, but it is certainly a way of seeing that it didn't occur to me until I started reading your stuff. What is it that connects you so much to the symbolic things of New York City? What do you think? Not just the fact that you came up here, but what is it about it? The symbolism of the trains. Okay. There's no tornadoes, the shadows of the buildings. In your everyday life, what happens to you when you walk down a street in New York? I'm a little esoteric, I know, but come down the rabbit hole with me. It always happens. Like, what is it about it?
Well, I mean, in some ways, where it's everything is so large, as like tornadoes and hurricanes,
bigger than life,
and in other ways, everything is just so tiny.
Right,
we're such little specks, and in all of these many ways we are connected. We see someone, we don't know where we saw them, maybe we were on that same subway car.
See, that's really interesting to me that you think about people in that way, because many people, and sometimes myself included, we all think we're separate entities. I mean, how many conversations have we had, especially about the gentrification of New York? Oh my God, the Lower East Side is changing. Oh my God, they're building towers everywhere. The artists are moving out, blah, 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 blah. And yet you take it to another level.
Yeah, I mean, things always change.
Things always change.
Yes, everything changes.
Just a couple of things. One is, I don't know why these are just coming up, so I'm sharing them. But one thing is, this city where there's 9 million people, there's people on the other side of your walls, above you, below you, on the same elevator, down on the subway and going. But yet this can be one of the loneliest places on earth. Even though you're surrounded by people and other human beings, if people don't understand you, that it can be so lonesome and such a lonely place. And another thing I'm wondering, because today on the subway right here, I was noticing this couple standing across from me. And I don't know why, I just kind of became fascinated with them. And I'm wondering, what is their life like? What is their home like? Are they, I couldn't tell if they were brother and sister, or maybe husband, wife, or if they were engaged, about to get married, and just like, what is their relationship? What is their thing? And as a writer, I'm sure you kind of developed that. Is that correct? Like, where you can see someone and that might be an inspiration for a
there are times when someone totally fascinates me and I don't even know why. And like I stare at them so much that they're gonna kill me in a minute. You know, how
you write a story?
The girl noticed that I was looking at them.
You pervert, you. Do you write a story? I love where you're going with this, Tim. So do you write a story about that person? Like the Belinda, you had all the players on that street, but you were observing them, I think, over time, right?
Well, I was close with Belinda.
Right. You were close to Belinda.
It was funny because I lived at 223 and she lived directly across from me in a building that we would now call a squat.
Oh, okay.
But at that time we called it an
abandoned building.
And this one hooked the electricity, everything was kind of hooked up. In fact, a very, very well-known saxophone player named C Sharp, who passed away, lived in that building. So so there's so many stories from that block. But anyway, Belinda and I were good friends, and her street name, no one knew her as Belinda. Her street name was Cougar. My street name was Puma. So we were Puma and Cougar.
Oh my God, that's great.
And she was an artist. She was a writer, and she was like me in the sense she was Puerto Rican. I'm Jewish, right? But she was like me in the sense that we did not grow up thinking artists were things that we could be,
Right.
and just
I can relate.
finding that. So I remember times in the street we would go our separate ways up to our own, my 5th floor walk up, second floor walk up in her abandoned building, and we would both be going to write. And that was that sense of community that people built. And we didn't have a word even for what we were doing, but I could tell you that we had 2 kids at the same time. So this is someone I was extremely connected to. So writing about her was very intimate. It wasn't just, oh, I'm looking at this person.
Right.
So you really connected with you, and had going through similar life experience, really.
And I was very connected with that block because this is back in the old Lower East Side, which didn't even call the East Village. 10th Street was a different world than 11th Street.
Right.
Yep.
You know, I mean, like you lived on 13th Street and I lived on 10th Street. Oh, you're in a different neighborhood.
Right.
So up even one end of the block was different than the other end of the block. So so that was my little world for a while. So that was where that book came from. But I also wanted to say, in terms of what we're talking about with things changing and changing, you know, you can't take it out of the context of the way developers have torn us all apart.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just not like, I know I said before things always change, and they do, but the way things have changed in this deliberate way that is not in the interest of people, that has torn.
I find it brutal. Brutal. It is
brutal.
Absolutely brutal.
And for me, in the capitalist society, it's greed. It's all based on money, and they will tear neighborhoods, homes, families, communities apart to make dollars.
Drugs, whatever you have to do.
Whatever you have to do to destroy. It is completely destructive.
And there was once a culture of people and their families lived within the same couple of square blocks.
Right.
So you had over there, you had your cousin, you had your brother.
Yeah.
And that type of gentrification destroyed those family ties where people had to go find housing wherever they could.
Puma, we've had Joe Preston on the show.
I was just going to say Joe.
Yeah. He is, the exact same story. Slugger Ann, his grandmother on the bar.
I remember Slugger.
You remember Slugger Ann? I mean, his whole entire family. And Joe, of course, is the only one left still.
Now,
here.
Now, if we could hear the other passage, the other poem.
Yes, we want to.
Gravesend
one. Yeah.
Here we go. Escape from Gravesend. Bukowski, DePrima, Ferlinghetti, Coltrane. Unlike my real life loves, you never let me down. In return, I've not been fickle or unfaithful. Our relationships are perfect, free of expectations and demands. You don't give me money or remember my name, but you're forever present, dead or alive, always prepared to comfort, inspire, engage, or enrage, to demand a revolution of the soul. Even if I recall nothing else when they yank the white sheet over my head, I'll be listening to a love supreme, reading a revolutionary letter, keeping Coney Island on my mind, Bukowski's bluebird soul fluttering because she gets so alone. No matter if friends bear witness or have stories to tell, I keep my first loves, that turquoise blue radio alongside my bed, suddenly giving a 12-year-old me the gift of Billy singing Willow Weep for Me as I restlessly twist the dial. Emptiness fueling insomnia will grow into a beautiful void someday, filled with jazz and poetry books purchased because of the Ferlinghetti cover or that Stan Getz blue. Missed those days of records and bookstores and solitary subway rides to West 4th Street. Adventure, illumination. Joining 2 a.m. lost souls passing my room above the F train. Humming trains, promising places to go when finally I get the fuck out of Gravesend, with its good pizza, cages of McDonald Avenue chickens awaiting slaughter, a street smelling blood, death, car wrecks, and maybe a little bit of hope trickling down from the elevated tracks.
Wow.
Wow. Wow.
He really describes it.
Yeah.
Chicken slaughterhouses.
Yes,
That
that was-
right. The
No, I
smell.
forgot about that. Yeah.
Walk right by that smell. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm sorry
Right.
you had to leave the whole Brooklyn Museum and Grand Armory Plaza. It's actually
Isn't that
traumatic
amazing?
that they.
Yeah.
But case in point, our traumas that we do carry with us, you know, we do. But to emerge in such a piece of writing like this, you know, that's the gift.
Well, I would rather have not had the trauma and not had that poem, but
Right.
Somebody, you know what? Somebody will read that
is what it
poem.
is.
You will lift
Yeah.
somebody up because they will read that poem. They will shake their
Absolutely.
head in the audience and go, aha, I remember feeling like that. And
Well,
that's why we do what we do.
Well, the best would be if some kid who is stuck in Gravesend right
Right.
now would read it and say, oh, maybe there's a way out. you
Right,
know?
right.
Yeah. Right.
Well, you're living proof that there's a way out.
Puma Perl, thank you so much. We so appreciate your coming on the show here. Tell everybody how they can find out more about you or to find your books.
Okay. Well, the books are available. I do have an Amazon writer's page. Puma Perl Birthdays Before and After is, and my one before that, Retrograde. They are available in those usual spots. I actually prefer bookshop.org because they support independent
Figured
bookstores.
you were going to say that. Yeah.
And to get in touch with me, I have an Instagram, Puma-Pearl or Puma Perl and Friends Band. And I'm on Facebook.
And YouTube. You have a YouTube channel. Your videos up on YouTube.
Oh, yes, I do have I do. You're right. Puma Perl and Friends or Puma Perl is on YouTube. So.
And I highly encourage people to come to your once a month show on Monday nights.
Can I mention one other thing?
Yes, please.
We
Yes,
will be doing a Valentine's Day show at the 11th Street Bar Tuesday, February 14th. Except it being us, it will be anti-Valentine's Day. And so,
Yes, the rebellion. I love it.
yeah,
And also Puma Perl. Pearl is without the A. It's P.
without the A, no way. You are right.
Right.
Oh, this is wonderful. Thank you so very much. I so appreciate your taking some time and coming
We're
on.
not really over yet. This is just the first part of our show. Tell us, like,
The end.
Right.
Yay, this way.
thank you everybody for tuning in, and you'll see us. We're not really going.
Yeah. Okay. See, that ends. There's a 45. There's a 40. No, you're fine. There's a 45-minute show that's broadcast. Now we're after the show, and we're just talking, and we can keep talking because I still got a couple things I want to talk to you about.
Yeah, and this still exists as the show on YouTube. The
Okay.
other one is for UBC TV. They're going to have a 24-hour channel.
So people are streaming live.
This won't even be on that for months, okay? But this whole show will be up on YouTube.
Yeah,
and
including this part, including
yeah, and I'm going to give you the link as soon as we do. So everything is perfect.
Okay.
We
But
just have to
also,
do it like that.
I just want to let you know we've had a lot of comments.
Yes, let's do that. I love the comments.
Teresa Sabin says, "Happy show day."
He's wonderful.
Let me see. Scooter Pie from I think from Michigan sent a heart.
Look, Lori Towers.
Lori
was the person who connected us.
We love Lori.
We
Lori
have
Towers says, "Hello, you. They're beautiful people. Happy New Year."
Yeah.
And she says, "Yeah, hello, you three beautiful people. Happy New Year." Sue's Genero says, "Hello, dolls from Massachusetts."
Hi, Sue.
Let me see. Lori Towers. I love this. Evan Lawrence, said, our good friend from Jersey City, but he said, I could see Gravesend from my apartment on Avenue V and 53rd Street.
And he's still here to talk about it.
Yes. And my good buddy, Arnold Rodriguez, who had a traumatic upbringing, he says, hurling your children down stairwells was very common in our childhood. He goes, I love the talk. I love the talk, guys. Apollonia Cruz says Happy New Year. And Apollo Cabrera says good. So yay.
Yay. And thank you everybody who tuned in today.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
So now I want to hear about the band. Tell me about the band.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering when we were going to get to.
No, we are. We have to put.
Because you were in Bowery Electric, was it? Was that where you started?
Well, kind of.
Go ahead.
All right. Speaking of Bowery Electric, I did have a monthly show there called Puma Perl's Pandemonium.
Right.
It was from September 2012 till just before the pandemic.
Right.
It probably would have still been going on. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't a monthly show. It was a quarterly show because that made it more of an event. But
it ended because of the pandemic.
Totally.
And then, like many things, I guess. Well, maybe it'll happen again.
No, it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
No, sometimes enough time goes by. Everyone's in a different place.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. So the map room is still being used for some shows. In fact, I had a laugh. This is a little off the topic, but I was watching your interview with John Pietaro, and I said, "Oh, we got COVID together that night." Bowery Electric.
Wait, everybody! Because
oh my God, right?
We're bonding over this. I met Lori for lunch that day, and she went to hug me. And my thing is no kissy, no huggy. Because I've had COVID a whole bunch of times, and I said no kissy, no huggy, and like 4 hours later, she texted me. She was supposed to come to something. She said, "We all have COVID." She didn't get it. John had it, but
right.
She
wasn't there then.
It made me happy. I didn't hug her.
Because I had avoided it.
You were able to avoid it that long, really.
Yes,
performing.
I was lucky because I didn't take extreme precautions. I didn't lock myself in my apartment.
Right.
I was very fortunate. I did get the vaccines and the boosters, but so did a lot of other people. So.
Right. And anyway, I did all of that. But you did a column called Writing in the Apocalypse.
I can't talk. Yes.
Thank you.
In Chelsea Community News because I had been covering cultural events for them, but there were no cultural events to cover.
Well, COVID was part of our culture.
Yeah. So the band was doing great up until that point. So just backtrack.
Yeah, let's backtrack to that
about the band.
Yeah.
So a lot of things happen extremely serendipitously and spontaneously.
I love that.
And I think I mentioned before that I had gotten more involved in doing poetry, and then I expanded into performance art, and we were a couple of friends of mine formed something called D-Day Productions. We were doing this poetry performance shows at the Yippie Museum Cafe and Bowery Poetry Club.
Right.
But then I started kind of wanting to move on, and I got tired of having to buy new dresses because part of them I would always have them cut off of me, and none of our shows were ever complete if we didn't get bruised and bloody.
I love it.
It was like the Who breaking guitars on stage.
Yeah,
it's not as expensive.
And this was post CBGBs. You remember CBGBs,
right?
So I was just kind of just wanting something else, and I was thinking about, I was going to see a lot of the local bands. I was thinking, it would be kind of cool to open up for them or do some poetry in between them. And I'm thinking about it. And as I'm thinking about it, the people putting the shows together start asking me to do exactly that.
Serendipity.
Yeah. So I start doing that. And then I've gotten to know all of these musicians. Some of them I already knew, some of them I just met. And then one particular night at, this was after Hurricane Sandy. So it was in 2012, I was part of a benefit at the Bowery Electric. And so was my friend Jeff Wilson, who is a guitarist, songwriter. He has two bands called Soul Cake and Bowery Boys. And he's done many, very multi-talented guy. And he was doing something there as well. And there was an open slot at the end of the night. And so he threw together a band, what he calls his Add Water and Stir bands. I
love it.
And he asked me to do a couple of poems with him too. And I remember after that, we looked at each other. I think we have something here, just like that.
It's amazing how it happened because you had been thinking it.
Yeah, I had been.
We
started doing some stuff, Jeff and I, with one other person, with Walter Stenning, who's a violinist, and Danny Ray's a saxophone. So it was basically saxophone.
Nice blend.
acoustic. And then, of course, being the type of extremist that I could be, all of a sudden I have 2 guitarists, I have keyboards, I have a drummer, I have a bass player, and it was just too much. You couldn't even hear me.
So you were the front person.
I was the front person.
So now, like the songs that you would do, were they original hard heavy metal?
A lot of it was really improvised with Joff in the lead.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It was not covers. Now at some point I had to kind of reel it in, and I started working primarily with Joff Wilson, Joe Stabnick, who's a guitarist and bass player, songwriter. His band that he'd been with for 10 years, 12 years ago, New York Junk started. Was a band that I was often asked to open up for. They were my friends.
Amazing.
We had like a shared sensibility. I traveled with them. We all went to Prague together, So I did a lot of things with them already. So then started working with Joe, and then our friends Dave Donen. He was actually introduced to me by Lenny Kaye. He's played with the Lenny Kaye band for like years, along with a lot of other people as a drummer. And I had given a copy of Ruby True to Lenny at Hank's in Brooklyn, where there was something for his 50th year in show business and show business and whatever. So I had given this book to Lenny, which he liked, and he said to Dave, "You got to buy her book. You got." Dave liked poetry, and he asked, "Maybe I could play with you sometime." And then it was a couple of years later, I think, that it actually happened. And at some point, I kind of reeled it in that it's myself, Joff, Joe, and Dave, and we sometimes have guest saxophonists, Danny Ray.
I love it.
Chucky, aka Raven, and sometimes maybe there's someone else who comes up for something, but it's basically the 4 of us are Puma Perl and friends. And for the Anyway Cafe, they're more acoustically oriented. They only have 3 people on stage at a time. So for that, it's myself, Joe, and Dave.
Wow.
Well, that Puma Perl
we have to definitely go to one of the performances.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I admire your longevity. It's hard.
It is.
It's hard, but like with me, it's all been from the beginning. I'm a Capricorn. I want this. I want that. I'm climbing. Oh, I'm not a climber in that sense. Just I want this next thing. I'm going to get. You have done exactly that without saying, "Oh, I'm going to go for this next thing. Oh, I'm going to go for that next thing." You're just kind of like you think it, and you organically,
you're open to
you're open to the thing happening, and it does
sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny because Patti Smith is also a Capricorn. Somebody who interviewed me for something else asked me how I feel about comparisons with Patti, like what's the difference in how we started out. And I don't know if I get compared to her that much, but some people do. And I said, well, one thing with Patti Smith that she had that I didn't have, she had ambition. I mean, she started out, she was playing in St. Mark's Place, and Lenny played with her, and there's the 2 of them. He has a guitar, she's doing the poetry, and look what has come of that. Many years later, Joff and I said, "Oh, I think we have something here." You know what I mean? I never had anything planned step by step.
But you're doing your thing, ambition can burn. It burns inside of me, and sometimes it can trip you up because you won't see the thing that you're supposed to get because you're so busy focused on the other thing.
But so can a lack of ambition.
Girl, you're
lack of ambition. You could not see the thing that you could be doing. That would be bringing you to another level. So there has, so it's good to be somewhere
in the middle.
In the middle, but is anyone in the middle?
Right.
But I have to tell you that you definitely have an innate and unique perspective
absolutely
on life, and your interpretation is incredible. You just keep being Puma Perl.
Yeah.
It works for you.
It's really incredible, really. So I wanted to talk to you. Did you do an artist in residency at HOWL?
We did. They have a program where they have a monthly artist in residency, and they asked me to do that, which is a great honor because I love Howl.
I do
you know.
too. Yeah, Jane has done, it's phenomenal.
Jane is
And
amazing. Jane
Hattie
Friedman.
Hathaway was a very dear friend. Brian Butterick was.
Oh, yeah.
I miss him like crazy.
Yeah, they have really kept such integrity.
Yeah.
And with using Arturo Vega's legacy.
Yeah,
in the way
right.
they
The
wanted
Arturo
it
Vega
used.
project. Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah, so I was very honored to do that in May of 2021, and it's still, you could still watch it on HOWL TV.
Yeah, I saw. That's where I saw it.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So yeah, I did something that combined poetry and our band. I had a theme in my head. Like the first week it was just poets, and the second week it was just Dave and Joe and I, and then the third and fourth week it was all four of us.
Right.
And I think the last time we had a guest, saxophonist, we had Raven. So it kind of built into very quiet to much noisier, and it was really
well, you just allowed it to. So much of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It evolves, you know, which is it's good for someone like me to talk to you. It makes me chomp at the bit less and listen more. No, because you've got to trust in something out there, and obviously you just kind of do, and it gets you to where you need to be, and it gets who you are and what you're about out there as an artist. And at the end of the day, that's all you can do.
It's true.
You know, that is all you can do.
Yeah, we're very lucky if we find people who do share sensibility. Because one thing I'll say, we're called Puma Perl in France, right? And when we started 10 years ago, it was Puma Perl and Friends, because it might be these friends, it might be those friends, it might be all these different
Some
people.
friends.
But it changed to people who are actually my friends.
Which is,
so that we've built that community. And we also play very, very much, we're very integrated with Joff's band Soul Cake, which is himself, Sarah Fay on bass, Laura Sativa on flute. We've done many things together. They're opening for us at the 11th Street Bar, which they do regularly when we play the 11th Street Bar. We've all done some traveling together upstate here. So it is truly friendship and a lot of trust involved.
And how beautiful is that, right?
Yeah. And you've also traveled, or you've performed upstate, like Kingston, because that is so.
Oh, yeah, we're at the Kingston Pop Museum.
I know Kingston.
Times. That was fun.
Yeah, that's fun.
And we also went to Joff's and Sarah's hometown of Rochester.
That's way up.
That was way up. Yeah. That was great. That was a lot of fun. So we performed in Connecticut. We'll be going back there, and then. I've performed all over the country, but not necessarily, with the band.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. You have been everywhere.
Yeah. And a little bit in Europe. Yeah.
Prague
and
how
London.
Cool.
Yeah.
Prague and London.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, as we come to the end, I always ask performers, what's your 5-year plan? I'm not asking you that because there isn't one.
No. Not.
And you know what? This is what I learned today. There doesn't need to be.
Right.
Puma Perl is just perfect the way she is.
Thank you. But the little bit of a plan is we want to record more and get it out in a way that
good.
So that brings more people on board that can listen to your work.
Absolutely.
That's a little bit of a plan.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, Puma Perl. We appreciate you coming on If These Walls Could Talk and talking to Wendy and me.
Thank you.
Right. And thank you, everybody who tuned in today. Wonderful guest. Oh, insightful, honest, just an amazing poet, performer. And we're very grateful to have you here today. Thank you
so much.
And Happy New Year, everyone. Yay.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.